What is up, guys? Private Eye Russ here, and welcome to the Private Eye Russ podcast. I am the titular character, Private Eye Russ. I'm the owner and operator of a full-service private investigation company. We offer a wide range of services from corporate theft investigations, whether it is material theft, embezzlement, or intellectual property. We can take care of you. Criminal defense investigations, litigation support investigations with an emphasis, very strong emphasis on negligent security cases, infidelity cases. Obviously, that's our bread and butter. And we also offer. I'm getting a lot more calls for long-term relationships or marital background investigations. So, how important is it to know what the person you're tying your life to, your money, your health, your happiness, your peace of mind to? It's of vital importance, especially when you go down the line and you have a revelation like we're going to react to in this video. If this gentleman and everybody else had sought out the services of Private Eye Russ, they might not be in the position they're in right now. I also offer for men who want to reclaim their lives and reclaim the strength they're supposed to be living in. Instead of dancing on a string like a marionette, trying to please other people, live the life you're supposed to live and become the pilot of your own ship instead of being a passenger like many of us are from day to day. Reach out to me. You can reach me at russ@privateiruss.com, russ@privateiruss.com. Alternatively, if that email doesn't get through, you can reach out to me at privateinvestigatorruss@gmail.com. That's privateinvestigatorruss@gmail.com. And you can even send me a direct message on X as well, too. I'm on X very frequently. I've written a bunch of stuff. Follow me there at Private Eye Russ on X, as well as like, subscribe, share the videos. More content on the way, guys. I know I haven't started out very strong, but I've got a recording schedule now, and so between 2 and 4 in the morning is when I typically make videos. So, shout out to your boy, Private Eye Russ. I don't sleep much anyway. I go to bed at 10:30. I'm up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning anyway, so might as well be productive, right? So let's go ahead and straight into this. This is a woman out in Texas. Shout out to her. Very good-looking picture. You never know what women look like in real life when they put these Instagram pictures. They're not really naturally curated. These are carefully crafted photos. You guys have to understand that. I actually had a guy who he did hire us to do some deep background, and as a bonus, we found some candid pictures of her. We sent those to him, and they look like two different people. When I briefed him, he requested a phone call, and I briefed him, and he was like, well, "Who's this other woman?" I said, "That's the same woman." He said, "That can't be." I said, "It's the same woman." So you guys need to stop believing the hype of some of these Instagram videos, man, and pictures, man. They are so heavily doctored. They're so heavily crafted. Women have come to understand that, obviously men are very visual creatures, and so they know how to make themselves look good. I'm not saying she's a bad-looking woman. She looks like she has incredible bone structure, but, just don't believe the hype all the time, guys. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get into its fair use.
A mom in Texas has been kicked off of several school district committees after her past and personal life are put in the spotlight. We explain what happened once fellow parents found out about her photos on escort websites and her prior arrests for prostitution.
Let's go ahead and, oh my gosh. Let's go ahead and put on the, welcome back, old friend. Let's go ahead and put on the bowler of justice. And I had somebody remark and comment that I have a really big head. Yes, I have an unusually large head. I'm sorry. What can I do about that? There's nothing I can do about it. This is what I have. I don't know why people are like, "Oh, you got a big head." Oh, okay, thank you. I didn't know that. I never heard that before. Anyway, fair use.
We sit down with retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt for his take. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So anybody who's been following Sidebar knows that we, for whatever reason, are seeing this kind of uptick in arrests of female school instructors and counselors.
There's, people think things are increasing. They're not increasing. What's happening is we're able to expose a lot of this behavior more than in the past. When I was a kid, there were more than one teacher. There was more than one teacher in different schools I went to that were known for hooking up with certain students. And so this has been, a very long time now. usually people only reported. It used to be they only reported if it was a man taking advantage of a student. Now they're reporting everything, and they're actually prosecuting women for the same thing, which that wasn't always the case. Anyway, fair use. Sorry about the sidebar there.
Counselors for allegedly engaging in illegal sexual conduct with minors. Now, this next story does not concern an arrest, but oh boy. So let's go to Godley, Texas. This
Shout out to
Ashley
Godley, Texas.
Petricide, a wife, a mother, I think a mother, we believe, of 3 kids, and she was working with the Godley Independent School District to recommend the materials for the sex education curriculum, right? Okay. Seems all fine. Only problem is, it turns out, she is a convicted prostitute. Yes, convicted in 2012 and 2016. And when you do a further deep dive, she apparently was recently advertising herself online.
Look at the boots. Shout out to Godley, Texas. I had no idea there was a town called Godley, Texas. Not making fun of you guys. Awesome name. But look at the photos. Only in Texas would an escort be wearing bright red cowboy boots in her. I'm assuming this is one of her escort ads. I really hope not. Pictures, but who knows? Fair use.
And as an escort. So she has been, not surprisingly, removed from her various positions. Oh, yeah, there was more than one. We're going to get into that. I want to bring back into sidebar former FBI agent Colin Schmidt. Colin, good to see you. So the school board trustee, Kayla Lane, said, quote, "We had no idea what was going on in her personal life. She was always very friendly, personable. Main question now is, how did this slip through the cracks when they were doing, you would think, a background check? Well, Colin, we have found out, reporting indicates that the school district said that background checks are required. Quote, and this is actually a quote from Mary Lowe from the nonprofit Families Engaged for Effective Education. She said, obviously the district would not knowingly allow anyone to work in a staff position or to volunteer with certain criminal convictions in their background. We would think that typically if you ran a background check, that those arrests would show up, and they don't. They're misdemeanors in the state of Texas. I think there's something that the state needs to look at in regards to how they're screening people that participate in schools. What is going on?"
Well, I kind of shake my head. Was once, ironically, it's called Godley, Texas. So what is the definition of a background?
That's fair.
So, what is their background? I mean, I hear this word thrown around. I heard it thrown around. In my first job, I was a deputy U.S. Marshal for 3 years. And the first thing every deputy U.S. Marshal, or if you're a new FBI agent, you do backgrounds. Well, background to the FBI is a lot different than a background apparently to the school district. So what they likely did is something called a live scan, which is basically you go into a UPS store or whatever, and you go ahead and you put in your number, and you go ahead and they take your fingerprints off this machine called a live scan machine, and those fingerprints are sent up to the state of Texas, and then they run them through the criminal database, which is connected to fingerprints, to see if anything pops up. Well, the problem with that is, in this case, a misdemeanor, if she wasn't arrested, that means her fingerprints were never taken. So then she's not going to pop up in the live scan system or in their fingerprint system. The second part of this is apparently she got something expunged. Well,
want to keep your hairline where it is?
Hold on now. Let me go ahead and shout out to everybody who wants to keep their hairline where it is. My hairline has long since left me behind. Anyway, so here's the thing with some of these backgrounds. It's a perfect segue for this. Here's the thing with some of these background investigations. They only look for felonies. Okay, so here, same thing in the state of Florida. It takes a certain amount of arrests for prostitution for it to become a felony. Okay, so you can be arrested, I think it's up to 5 or 6 or 7 times, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it is. Maybe it's lucky number 7 before it's actually a felony. And then you're, a habitual offender or whatever they want to call it, but or a career prostitute. And so regular background checks are only going to show felonies, not necessarily misdemeanors. That's why we go a lot deeper than what he's talking about, the live search, or and I don't use those when it comes to background. We go through a ton of data. A lot of data we go through. We got phase 1 and then phase 2, and and for the enhanced background investigation, we go all the way to phase 3, and so there's an incredible amount of scrutiny on this individual. So, and again, even these only reveal arrest records. So we go even further, and we have ways of detecting and searching for if they were engaged in sex work that they're trying to hide, even further than what the ordinary or even some of the enhanced background investigations go through. So anyway, fair use, but I'm in agreement with him so far. Oops.
Expungement of the case would not show. So it's obvious their concept of a background is much different than what we have a concept of a background in terms of people who are around our children.
Okay.
Now, that's not necessarily through any malfeasance. Most people just don't know that there are different levels of background. So I'll give you an example of an increased amount of background that I conducted myself. So my son, he's 18 now, but when he was going to daycare, I was incredibly selective. My ex-wife can tell you, yes, I'm divorced. My ex-wife can tell you that I vetoed several, even though they were recommended, and I had a set of criteria. One of the criteria I had was there can be no male employees, period, no male employees. That was one of my criteria for obvious reasons. I don't need to go into details of that, but even further, what I did was I stalked and creeped through the employee parking lot, and I wrote down all their tags, and I ran individual background checks on everybody that worked there before I let my son, attend that particular daycare. Now, they all worked out really well. They're still actually doing incredibly well. Shout out to them. I won't put their name out there, but great, excuse me, a great daycare, and they're experts and top-notch child care specialists. But I wasn't just going by someone else's recommendation for something as precious and important as my son. Too many people do. They take people's recommendations, and we'll talk about some of that, a little bit further, but I wasn't willing to do that. Obviously, I'm Private Eye Russ. I'm a little bit maybe different as far as the amount of scrutiny I'm going to apply to different things, just because I have the resources, but also too, I get to see the, not always, but a lot of times I get to see the dark side of human nature. So anyway, fair use.
Okay, so we want to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video. I think it's pretty clear from the stories that we cover that it's not always safe out there. When you're hurt, talk to your whole legal team all on your phone, which is just amazing to think about. www.forthep.
All right.
My understanding is that Catcher Side was serving on this School Health Advisory Council, which is actually required under Texas law. You have to have these councils, and they advise on health education programs. And these members have to be appointed by the school board. But the district came out and told a local media outlet, Fox 4, that there was a mistake. And she never went through the approval process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the other thing I want to touch on, well, two things. That's bureaucratic incompetence, number one. And number two, people forget that schools, churches, all these places, unfortunately, not only attract a lot of really good people who want to do good things for good people, but it also attracts some people with nefarious, issues or needs, or want to do bad things because to further their own personal.
Now, to be fair, I don't think she meant ill towards these children. I think she wanted to hit the reset button, which many women do. They'll live a certain lifestyle a certain way. Hers was on the extreme side of things. She wasn't just, giving it away. She was selling it. So I guess you could say she was, engaging in commerce or whatever she was doing. But I don't necessarily think that she had ill intent. However, the problem is that they said that, very recently she was still advertising as an escort. So she wanted to hit the reset button to a certain extent, from the public perception side of things, but she still wanted to live that lifestyle in the background. I don't know how she thought someone wouldn't find out about this. Many of the women that we've uncovered sex work, under the, when we've conducted these, pre-long-term relationship, premarital background investigations, have covered their tracks much, much better. So we've got to be a lot slicker and a lot more, we have to, learn how to discern these things that they're trying to hide and keep away from everybody. If she's been arrested, that should have popped up right away. I mean, like, honestly, you shouldn't even have needed an enhanced background check for this. However, like he said, most of these background checks only uncover, felonies, but even further than that, the background checks we run, when it comes to criminal especially, we go nationwide. Most of these are state specific, so you have to keep that in mind when you pay your, $15 or $20 or whatever it is to these different services. Not that they're bad services, but most of those services are the same background checks they give for somebody who wants to rent an apartment somewhere. It's not very revealing. Anyway, fair use.
Desires and needs. So that's why a background is so important. That's why backgrounds are now in the Boy Scouts. The backgrounds are now with the Catholic Church. And true backgrounds, not just some live scan where it's just a bureaucratic box check. So in this case, obviously, they didn't go through. I don't think they really even had a process. And number two, they need to bring in professionals to do backgrounds on these people, because a live scan is not enough. They just need to go out and ask a few questions. Go around. I'm sure if they went and walked down into her house and knocked on her door and just did a good old interview, multiple red flags would have popped up.
All right, I think that's a little bit naive. Not really. Right. So people who want to hide this type of lifestyle will change venues, they'll change locations, they'll change friend groups, and so you walking up and talking to somebody, say, hey, what do you think of such and such? They're gonna, the people you're gonna talk to that are her neighbors are going to be the people that she has given that carefully crafted persona to, and that's what they see. Very attractive lady, obviously very fit, takes care of herself, and so when people see this, most people go by perception. And if you see a pretty woman whose family, husband, children, all the rest of the stuff, you automatically make the assumption that she is a good person. Now she has to prove herself, to be a bad person versus someone who may not have her physical appearance and her the appearance of the family and the house and the children and all the rest of this stuff that might seem a little bit more dodgy. Then you're not going to give as much trust right away. And it seems like they kind of just trusted the way she looked. And I think there was also another component in there, but let's listen a little bit more. Fair use.
And those would have been leads that they could follow up on.
Let me touch upon this a little bit more, that you might.
And what he's talking about is a background where you go talk to a neighbor, right? So here's how that fails, and it does fail very often. Okay, so say for instance, you go to one of my neighbors from the past, and me and this neighbor didn't like each other at all. He thought I was a douchebag. I thought he was a douchebag. You go talk to him and you say, hey, we're looking into the background of Private Eye Russ. What do you think about it? Oh man, let me tell you, he was such and such, and boy, I saw girls coming over all the time, and I think some of them might have been workers or whatever, and I thought he cheated on his taxes, and I heard that he kicked puppies and kittens and robbed an orphanage, and who knows what he's going to say, right? And so that's very, very subjective, and very rarely are you going to get, unless someone is just openly and brazenly criminal, very rarely are you going to get information like that that's going to be helpful from a background standpoint. Just most people will dish to the dirt, but it's not necessarily something that's really relevant to what you're looking at. It could just be somebody that just doesn't like the person. So there are ways to get past that and move past that, but this is part of what we do. So fair use.
Provide some perspective on. So, reporting indicates that she was selected by Superintendent Rich Deere to the Long Range Facility Planning Committee. She was a volunteer on the Family and Community Engagement Committee, the Parent Teacher Organization, and Godly Athletic Booster Club, and she led a cheerleading group. So it's not.
So clearly she married a wealthy guy. Because she got a lot of time on her hands. She has a lot of time on her hands, and guys, she's got the trophy wife look. Rich guys like these small, petite, pretty, well crafted, well taken care of, usually very skinny, attractive women, and that's what they want. And it doesn't mean that she's not capable of doing other things, but this is not the stereotypical trophy wife, obviously, because of her background, but looks wise, she checks all the boxes.
Not like she was part of one organization. It seems to me that whatever fault there was, it lies with many people here, no?
Absolutely. And the magic word is intent. That why did they intend to hire this person?
By the way, just to let everybody know a little bit more, her husband, Michael Ketcherside, he serves on the school volunteer group Athletic Booster Club and Watchdogs. I do want to talk to you about how they found out, right? How did they find out, right? So apparently, Ketcherside had claimed that she owned all these businesses, and parents were like, that doesn't sound 100% right. So they look into her, and they do a LexisNexis public record search, and it shows her email matches the email from an escort site for the name Lola Bree. All of these.
Okay, so again, like I said, she was incredibly sloppy. Most of the women we've been able to uncover hidden sex work were very, very crafty, and they covered their tracks a lot better. This woman wasn't very, very. Maybe she just thought no one would ever look into what she was doing, but she brought too much attention to herself. Her looks are already going to attract, bring a lot of attention and some jealousy from some of the other trophy wives, but also too the scrutiny about lying about owning different businesses. How do you own all these businesses, but you have so much time to serve on all these different things? So yes, people got suspicious and they started looking into her. And some of these small towns, people get nosy, and sometimes that's a good thing. So. And her email address, she used the same email, okay. Note to women who want to hide their sexual activity: if you have a hooker email address, from a hooker site, from a prostitute site, from an escort site, whatever it is, from a massage site, whatever it might be. Perhaps one of the first things you should do if you want to cover your tracks is separate yourself from that email address. But just saying. Anyway, I won't give any more tips about that. This is. Look, they found this out, but this was really obvious. It shouldn't have taken this long for them to figure this out. Anyway, fair use.
Different escort sites. And Lola Bree, their images are quite graphic, and they're found on these publicly available websites. Again,
yeah, I almost want to look up. Lola Bree. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep this video. I almost want to look it up and react to the pictures, but I want to keep this video, PG. But look, man, she did not cover her tracks at all, man. And so I've got to, anyway, very use.
Absolutely. So I'm sure I haven't done it, but maybe even a couple of Googles would have popped this person up, or a Google facial search, put her picture.
Okay, he's talking about reverse image searches like TinEye, Google Images. And so here's the problem with that. Most escorts will alter their pictures, even if it's slightly. They'll add a filter that will prevent you from getting a match in many, if not all, of these reverse image searching the free ones, and even the I subscribe to some of the paid ones, and I've compared photos, and they will alter their photos so that you can't do that, and they do that by design. Again, they know how to cover their tracks. The really good ones know how to cover their tracks. This woman, amateur at best. Wow.
Picture out, and then it would have popped up. Just basic background 101, and obviously they never did it. And good on these.
Shout out to that picture. There's a nice picture. Nice boots.
These parents and these advocates for kids who did the right thing and said, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. Let's do it. And they only asked one question. Okay, do these businesses make any sense? And all of a sudden the whole thing fell apart. And it's amazing. If you ask the right question, you will get answers that will blow your mind.
Now, before we get into the criminal potential criminal aspect of this. I want to go into kind of the moral aspect and legal aspect. So obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if parents somehow take legal action against the school district here in regards. But somebody might be listening to this and goes and might say, I don't get what the big deal is, right? So she's not a violent criminal. She's not accused of any, inappropriate conduct with the students, like we've covered on so many different sidebars. I think the thing to note is in Texas, escort sites are actually legal. You can charge people money for your time and your companionship and your friendship. It's when you pay for sex that it becomes illegal.
And that's a loophole people will use. You'll see some of these escort ads. They'll say, "Hey, you're paying me for my time and company. I'm not selling sex or any other sexual or illegal services." And obviously, that's exactly what they're doing. That's precisely what they're doing. But they do that as try to be like create a legal loophole. I didn't know that about Texas. I would have thought they would have been the exact opposite. But okay, well, fair use.
So walk us through why this is such a big deal. Is this a big problem that she had this past and was serving in this capacity?
Well, it comes down to...
Stop. Don't get a HELOC until...
Hold on. And so this is a perfect segue. They're going to go into the moral aspect of things. And I get it. People have a problem with someone who's going to be around their children with, from a morality standpoint. And you have to be really, really careful nowadays. We'll talk in further videos about parenting and some of the strategies I used to protect my son from some of the influences that could pop up in schools. And at the end of the day, you're their parent. The school is not their parent. I know schools think that it's their job to educate children. They don't say teach your children anymore. They say educate them. And what they're producing is, for the most part, is a bunch of easily programmable NPCs, and so you need to protect your children from that, and we'll talk about some strategies about that as well too, because I think it's incredibly important. When I compare my son to many other children, I am so glad I spent the time I did and strategized and used the big part of my brain to figure out how to raise him differently from the way the norm anyway, I guess. Anyway, fair use.
The parents and what they want. I'm a parent of 4 children in a school district. I keep a close eye. Of course, I'm as a retired FBI agent on who comes around my kids, and if I have any suspicions, I'm going to follow up on it, and I'm going to ask those tough questions to the superintendent and to my school board, whether they like it or not. So it comes down to, what do the parents want? Do they want a school district that has people like this or not? We're seeing this OnlyFans nonsense all over the place, and that's really demonstrating these people who are very self-absorbed. And we go into a deeper conversation about society as a whole and the narcissism. But it really comes down to me as a parent. I do not want this person around my children. This is not something that I want my children to be exposed to. I get that choice as a parent. All these parents get, and if any of those school board members come out and start popping off.
And that's a very good point. Parents, I think sometimes we get so caught up in work, business, especially if you're a business owner, if you're working a bunch of hours, you just want to send your kids to school, and they come home, hang out with them, and put them to bed, feed them, clothe them, all the rest of that thing. And the school is supposed to just take care of the rest. Here's the problem with that. Your children are spending more waking hours with teachers than they do with you. So you have to be incredibly plugged in to everything they're trying to download into your children. I know a person who is, and I'm not making commentary one way or the other, but this woman and her husband, they're both very, very far right. Well, they didn't pay attention to what their daughter was being taught, and before they knew it, their daughter actually got an internship and wound up working for Planned Parenthood, which is on the opposite end of the political spectrum from where they are. And when I interviewed them and asked them both, how did this happen? They said, we weren't paying attention, and before we knew it, it was too late. And I make this point regularly. Don't wait to start teaching your child. You have to start teaching them as soon as they come out. You have to start creating that bond with them, the influence with them, so that when they come home from school, they feel comfortable telling you every single thing that happened. What happened in school? What did you learn? And then you get a better understanding of what you have to counteract, and you do have to counteract some things. I was lucky. My son went to schools in a school board where the parents were incredibly plugged in. A lot of these women have time. A lot of them, have very wealthy husbands. A lot of wealthy people around here, and so the women typically don't have to work, and so they get plugged in. And if they don't like something, like they've run principals out of town, they've run teachers out of town, they've run other school employees out of town. Maybe one day I'll tell the story about how the mom mafia actually helped me out in an incident that happened at school that I had to step in, and it was unfortunate, but guess what? I'm here for it if I have to be. But you got to stay plugged in. Anyway, sorry. Fair use. Let's keep going.
About, well, what's the big deal? The parents need to get together and get rid of that school board member.
I will say, though, I think at the very least, either she wasn't honest about her past or the questions weren't asked. But I think it would have been a different situation if she came clean about it. The school board said, look, her credentials are great other than this. We really think she'd be good. And they kind of put it to a vote.
That's not how it works, though. People don't divulge negative things. Most people don't. The vast majority of them. And women have a tendency to want to live that life. Then they have regrets when they want to legitimize their existence and they want to get married and have children in the house and all the rest of the stuff that she apparently has. And this is where the deception comes in. And this is where you have to have an investigator that is well-versed, or an investigative team that is well-versed in finding these hidden kernels and secrets. So a background check, or even a criminal background check, or one that looks at felonies, would only, even if it was nationwide and not just state-specific, that's what most of them do. They, okay, have you ever been arrested in the state of Florida or Texas or wherever? We look nationwide. But, what if she hasn't been arrested? That's where our expertise comes in. We are able to find hidden sex work. I was able to uncover recently a gentleman wanted a background on a woman he was considering marrying, and she told him that she'd never been involved in any sort of online work or sex work. And while it did not appear that she got involved in any direct sex work on the surface, we found evidence of of online content creation. Okay, based on that, we started looking further, and then we did find instances that she was available for hire in person as well too. Obviously, he decided to extricate himself from that relationship. And what I advise guys to do is conduct these investigations in secret, keep them quiet, and do not divulge or announce the fact that you've conducted this. Too many guys want to do this, big reveal moment, like they're, on a television show, like, Perry Mason moment, like, dun, 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 aha, look here, and make a TikTok video out of it or some other nonsense. Stop doing that, man, because what you're doing is you're giving away the game, and you make it easier for women to start understanding that they are being scrutinized. So let's go into the importance and why it's important to know who you're marrying or letting move in for so many different reasons. We had one case where a guy was, he married a woman, and once they got married, she slowly started becoming more and more violent. And to the point where he was sleeping in a separate bedroom and actually put an exterior door on his second bedroom with locks on it because he didn't feel safe sleeping with her at night because she actually attacked him. And, a lot of guys will suffer this stuff and won't say anything probably because it's embarrassing. So if he had looked into her background, which we did eventually, because she also started cheating on him, big surprise, she had a history of violence. She had a history of domestic violence. She had been arrested on multiple occasions. She didn't get any felonies. Things got pled down. She apparently had some decent attorneys or access to good legal representation because her family was pretty well-to-do. And so she never had a felony, but she was a violent woman. And so if he had gone into her background, he would have uncovered this and had the opportunity to make an informed decision. So let's go into some of the other ramifications if you don't background women before you marry them. Her husband, shout out to her husband. He thought he had the perfect trophy wife. Now all of a sudden, his name is being dragged through the mud. When you marry a woman or she moves in with you or your long-term relationship partners, she is now your brand ambassador. She is your brand ambassador. And so as a man, we are judged by our choices. Not always the outcomes, but our choices, and some of the outcomes as well too. But our choices, especially, and if you choose someone that close to you, which there is no more important decision than someone you're going to marry, then it speaks really, really poorly on your decision making and your ability to sniff out danger or trouble and so many different things. But also too, think about his reputation. They were all on the school boards and all the rest of these things, and they were that trophy couple, and now all of a sudden, his name is mud. His name is being dragged through the mud. His family name is being dragged through the mud. The children's names are being dragged through the mud. And I know people will say it shouldn't matter. Women will say all the time, my past shouldn't matter. Shut the hell up with that nonsense. It does matter. It doesn't matter if you want to be alone. If you want to be a spinster living by yourself and you're not tying yourself to someone else or taking someone else's name on, then no, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it shouldn't matter. If you want to live in that, go ahead and live in that and own it, right? But if you want to change gears and live one way, live like a devil, and then a few years later you get married, you want to get married, all the rest of the stuff, you want to hide all that stuff, and now you want to be an angel, this is where, and a lot of these cases don't get uncovered. A lot of these people don't find out about things. A lot of these guys wouldn't have found out about their wives' hidden past, hidden sex work, all the rest of these things if it wasn't for our investigation. But that's why you need these investigations also to protect your reputation. If your name is important to you, my name is important to me, but if your name is important to you, you'll do this. You'll want to protect your name. Especially these people living in a place like this where everybody's trying to stay plugged in. They're trying to raise their children. They're very careful because there are so many negative influences on your children. Do you want an escort as a board member or an advisor or around people's children? Most people would say no. Some people wouldn't care, but most people would say no. So anyway, if you got any value out of this, I think you did. Like, subscribe, share. Again, if you need help from an investigator, or if you need personal coaching, strategic planning, reach out to me at russ@privateinvestigatorruss.com, or alternatively, privateinvestigatorruss@gmail.com, or send me a direct message on X. We'll get on a live call and see how we can help you. Anyway, like, subscribe, share. This has been an episode of the Private Eye Russ podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and stay plugged in, guys. There's more to come. This is Private Eye Russ, and I am out. Well, let me get right at the head. Salute. All right, there you go.